case, Cyrus, according to Josephus, was influenced by being shown these verses in Isaiah. Now, he may not have been. Josephus may only be guessing. We don't know where Josephus got his information. But it is possible that some priest, after Cyrus conquered Babylon, showed him these verses in Isaiah and said, look, our prophet said that you would do this. And there is some reason to believe this could be true, because it says in verse 2, in his decree, it says, thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth, Yahweh, God of heaven, has given me. That's what Isaiah said. Yahweh says, I'm giving you all these kingdoms. I'm destroying these kingdoms before you. And so he might be referring to that prediction. Yahweh, the Lord God of heaven, has given me. He doesn't say my Persian gods have given me these victories, as a man might be expected to do. But he recognizes Yahweh as the one who has sovereignly done that. He says, and he has commanded me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judea, or Judah. Who is there among you of his people? May his God be with him. Now let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of Yahweh, God of Israel. Then he says in parentheses, he is God. Now for Cyrus to say this, again, would be more easily explained if he had in fact seen the prophecies of Isaiah and been amazed that a Jewish prophet hundreds of years before his time had named him and said what he would do. He could easily say, well, that Yahweh, he is God. Yahweh is the one who's made me the ruler here. Yahweh has given me a charge to let you people return and build your house. All of that is in fact found in Isaiah. And so that a pagan king would speak this way about Yahweh and say he is God, the God of Israel, like, for example, Nebuchadnezzar had done on occasion when impressed by what God showed him through Daniel or through Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it says in verse 4, and whoever remains in any place where he sojourns, let the men of his place help him with the silver and gold, with goods and livestock, besides freewill offerings for the house of God, which is in Jerusalem. Now, Cyrus is saying, anyone who wants to, any Jew who's in my precincts, that under my jurisdiction, is free to go back to Jerusalem if he wishes and build the house of the Lord. I'm doing this in response to a command I've received from Yahweh, who is the true God, the God of Israel. But he says, if any of you don't go, you don't have to, but you need to financially help. So if you're going to stay where you are and not go back to Jerusalem, then you need to send financial help to your brothers who are going. So Cyrus really paved the way for the temple to be rebuilt, even though he was a pagan. Verse 5, then the heads of the fathers' houses of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all those whose spirits God had moved, arose to go up to build the house of Yahweh, which is in Jerusalem. Now it mentions the heads of the fathers' houses of Judah and Benjamin, and the Levites and priests. It doesn't mention the other tribes. Of course, the reason for that is that the 10 tribes to the north had been destroyed long before the Babylonian exile had begun. At least 50 years before, approximately 50 years before. And so, or more, actually, more than that. 150 years before, excuse me. So some period of time earlier, the northern tribes had been pretty much eliminated from the map. But some members of those tribes had previously immigrated to the southern kingdom of Judah. But the southern kingdom of Judah was essentially the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. And so they had retained their tribal identities. And the heads of their houses knew what tribes they were of, because they had retained that identity all the way up until the time of the exile. Whereas persons from the other tribes, some of them had become part of the nation of Judah, and probably some had retained knowledge of their tribal identity, but they've been mostly merged in the land of Judah. Now the Levites and priests would be an exception, of course, because the Levites had a special identity, and most of them, no doubt, had already come back down to Judah before the fall of the northern kingdom. The policies of the northern kingdom did not honor the Levites, and therefore they had motivation to go back down to Judah back in the early days, after the split of the two into the two kingdoms. And so the tribe of Judah had Judah and Benjamin and Levites. predominantly and distinctly. They had also members of other tribes among them, but perhaps the heads of their families' houses were not, those tribes perhaps had not remained so distinct and identifiable. And all those who were around them encouraged them with articles of silver and gold and goods and livestock and all precious things besides all that was willingly offered. So that is, the people who didn't go back with them, the Jews around them, helped them out financially. King Cyrus also brought out the articles of the house of Yahweh, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from Jerusalem and had put in the temple of his gods. And Cyrus, the king of Persia, brought them out by the hand of Mithridath, the treasurer, and counted them out to Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. Now, Sheshbazzar is, his identity is a matter of controversy. He is not really mentioned as a character in the story after chapter 1. Instead, the governor is said to be Zerubbabel, and that as early as chapter 2, and especially in chapter 3. Zerubbabel is mentioned in chapter 2, verse 2, as the one with whom the exiles returned. And then by the time you get to chapter 3, Zerubbabel is and Jeshua are obviously the leaders of the people there. And so who's this Sheshbazzar? One theory, held by some of the old commentators like Matthew Henry, was that Sheshbazzar was just another name for Zerubbabel. It's possible, because a lot of these characters had more than one name, and Zerubbabel could have had the name Sheshbazzar as well. Probably, if so, that would mean Zerubbabel would be his Jewish name and Sheshbazzar his Persian name, just as Daniel and his companions had both Hebrew and Babylonian names. Actually, Sheshbazzar would be more of a Babylonian than a Persian name. But most scholars don't agree that this is the same person. Many of them believe that Sheshbazzar was a man who was of lesser rank than Zerubbabel, but was entrusted with these goods and given the charge over their safe transit to Jerusalem. But that he wasn't really, he didn't have much political authority in the returning community, and Zerubbabel was the man with that authority. Some say that Sheshbazzar was actually appointed to be the governor prior to Zerubbabel, but didn't last long. He may have died early, or for whatever reason left office early, and Zerubbabel took over his place. This is something that will never probably be able to be decided unless we get some other documents discovered that have not been discovered that tell us more about Sheshbazzar. In any case, he is in the picture in chapter 1, but instead of him, we have Zerubbabel as the leader in the other chapters. Now, in verse 9, this is the number of them. There were 30 gold platters, 1,000 silver platters, 29 knives, 30 gold basins, 410 silver basins of a similar kind, and 1,000 other articles. All the articles of gold and silver were 5,400. All these Sheshbazzar took with the captives who were brought from Babylon to Jerusalem. So he went with them, but he does not seem to be significant in the later story. Now chapter 2 says, "Now these are the people of the province who came back from the captivity of those who had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away to Babylon, and who returned to Jerusalem and Judah, everyone to his own city. Those who came with Zerubbabel were Jeshua, of course the high priest, and the two of them together are mentioned frequently together as the leaders after this. Nehemiah, which was not the Nehemiah after whom the book is named. At least most scholars do not believe it is that Nehemiah. Sariah, Realiah, Mordecai. Now Mordecai, of course, is the name of an important character in the book of Esther, but again, scholars would not identify this Mordecai with that Mordecai because, frankly, the time frame, it doesn't work out well. And this Mordecai went back to Jerusalem, whereas the other Mordecai in the book of Esther was still living in Persia at a later date than this. So almost certainly a different Mordecai. Bilshan, Mispar, Bigvai, Rehum, and Baanah, the number of the men of the people of Israel. And then it breaks them down into smaller groups. And these smaller groups are listed in different ways. Sometimes they're listed as going with a certain individual whose name is given. Other time, they are mentioned by the cities that they are from. And it seems like these two ways of designating them are kind of mixed together. It says in verse 3, the people of Perosh, 2,172. The people of Shephatiah, 372. The people of Ara, 775. The people of Pahath Moab, of the people of Jeshua and Joab, 2,812. The people of Elam, 1,254. The people of Jatu, 945. The people of Zakkai, 760. Now, as it goes on, it's sometimes hard to know whether these names are the names of cities or the names of people, and we've already, up to this point, encountered both. Names like Shephatiah in verse 4 are going to be somebody's name, but a name like Pahath Moab in verse 6 is almost certainly the name of a city, although there are people of Jeshua and Joab in that group. So we're going to have the people of X, and X is either going to be a city. No doubt the people had been deported from that city that is named, or else it's a person's name, which is either somebody who's the head of that family at the time of the return, or perhaps an ancestor of those people. But lots of these names are simply not identifiable. We don't know whether it's a person's name or location name, but we just have these numbers associated with them. So verse 10, the people of Bani, 642. The people of Bebai, 623. The people of Asgad, 1,222. The people of Adonikim, 666. The people of Bigvai, 2,056. The people of Adin, 454. The people of Ater of Hezekiah, 98. The people of Bezai, 323. The people of Jorah, 112. The people of Hashum, 223. The people of Gibar, 95. The people of Bethlehem, 123. The men of Netopha, 56. The men of Anathoth, 128. And I just would mention this, that Jeremiah was from Anathoth, originally a priestly city in Judah, and when he was in prison, he was instructed by God to redeem a piece of property, purchase from his uncle, I think it was, a piece of property in Anathoth, even though it was going to be overrun and all the people of it were going to be exiles. But God had him purchase the rights to it and the deed to this property as an act of faith in his own prophecy that the people would come back. So he knew that Anathoth, as well as the rest of Judah, was doomed to go into captivity for 70 years. And Jeremiah would never see this property. But in purchasing a deed to it, it was his symbolic way of saying, there will be ownership of this property again someday by people of Judah, because God will bring them back from Babylon. And so we find that there are people of Anathoth, Jeremiah's city, who are among those that return, 128 of them. The people of Asmaveth, 42. The people of Kirjath Aram, obviously a city, of Chephariah and Beeroth, 743. The people of Ramah and Geba, 621. The men of Michmas, 122. The men of Bethel and Ai, 223. The people of Nebo, 52. The people of Magbish, 156. The people of other Elam, there was an Elam earlier, now there's the other Elam, 1,254. The people of Harim, 320. The people of Lod, Hadad, and Ono, 725. The people of Jericho, 345. The people of Sanea, 3,630. Now, that's just the people from various families and towns. Now we've got attention to the priests who return. The priests, the son of the sons of Jediah, of the house of Jeshua, 973. The sons of Immer, 1,052. The sons of Pashur, 1,247. The sons of Harim, 1,017. Lots of priests, really. Almost a disproportionately large number of priests when you think about it. Because a lot of these towns, there were 54 or 122 people coming, and yet from just one branch of these priests, there were 1,247, and from another branch, 1,017, and so forth, and 1,052. So there were thousands of priests coming, disproportionately represented, probably because they were the ones most zealous and had the most to gain, as it were, by the reestablishment of the temple worship, which was their calling. Also the Levites, which would be related to the priests, but obviously not of the family of Aaron. The sons of Jeshua and Kadmiel, the sons of Hodaviah, 74. The singers, the sons of Asaph, 128. These sons of Asaph either wrote some of the psalms or had some of the psalms written for them. They were the singers. The sons of the gatekeepers, the sons of Shallum, the sons of Ater, the sons of Talmon, the sons of Akub, the sons of Hatita, the sons of Shobai, 139 in all. The Nethinim. Now, the Nethinim are only mentioned a few times in Scripture, but scholars seem to be agreed that the Nethinim were the people descended from the Gibeonites who entered into that deceptive arrangement with Joshua. Remember when Joshua was conquering the land of Canaan and was as forbidden by God forbidden to make arrangements with the Canaanites. These people of Gibeon, who were Canaanites, deceived Joshua into thinking they were from somewhere else, not in Canaan, and convinced him to enter into a mutual non-aggression pact with them so that they wouldn't be wiped out. Only later did Joshua find out that they were people who lived nearby in Canaan and that he should not have made such an agreement, but he honored that agreement. And it turned out that they were good allies of Israel. And the Nethinim are the descendants of the Gibeonites, according to what most scholars would say. The Nethinim, the sons of Ziha, the sons of Hasupha, the sons of Tabioth, the sons of Keros, the sons of Siaha, the sons of Padon, the sons of Labana, the sons of Hagabah, the sons of Akub, the sons of Hagab, the sons of Shalmai, the sons of Hanan, the sons of Giddel, the sons of Gahar, the sons of Reiah. Now, there's going to be a test on this. The sons of Rezin. If not here, then when you stand before the pearly gates, you'll have to answer the details of this list. The sons of Rezin, the sons of Nekoda, the sons of Gazam, the sons of Uzzah, the sons of Paziah, the sons of Besai, the sons of Asna, the sons of Meunim, the sons of Nephusim, the sons of Babuk, the sons of Hakupha. I really don't have to read these names except it's good practice. The sons of Harhur, the sons of Basluth, the sons of Mahida, the sons of Harsha, the sons of Barkos, the sons of Sisera, the sons of Tema, the sons of Neziah, and the sons of Hatipha. I hope none were left out of that list. Verse 55, the sons of Solomon's servants, the sons of Sotai, the sons of Sophereth, the sons of Peruda, the sons of Jaala, the sons of Darkon, the sons of Giddel, the sons of Shephatiah, the sons of Hatil, the sons of Pokereth, the sons of Zebiam, Zebiam, in all likelihood, the sons of Ami. All the Nethinim and the children of Solomon's servants were 392. And these were the ones who came up from Tel Mena, Tel Harsha, Cherub, Adan, Immer. But they could not identify their father's house or their genealogy, whether they were of Israel. These people, unfortunately, had lost the genealogical records and couldn't really tell what tribe they were of. And it says the sons of Deliah, the sons of Tobiah, and the sons of Nekoda, 652 in that category. And of the sons of the priests, the sons of Habiah, the sons of Koz, the sons of Barzillai, who took a wife of the daughters of Barzillai the Gileadite. So there's another two Barzillais. The Barzillai the Gileadite, of course, was the man who helped David with provisions when he and his loyalists fled from Absalom. And Barzillai was a rich old man who brought them provisions and food. And later, David offered him a place at the table in his kingdom. And Barzillai said, I'm an old man. What do I care about that? And so he was a good guy, a friend of David, and he had a daughter, apparently, or daughters, one of whom married this other guy named Barzillai. And it says in verse 62, these, the ones, especially the ones that could not prove their lineage by genealogies, it says, these sought their listing among those who were registered by genealogy, but they were not found. Therefore, they were excluded from the priesthood as defiled. You can't have somebody in the priesthood if they're not descended from Aaron, and they couldn't prove that they were. Some of them apparently were believed to be, but couldn't prove it, so they couldn't be included. And the governor, which in this case is probably Zerubbabel, not the Sheshbazzar, the governor said to them that they should not eat of the most holy things till a priest could consult with the Urim and the Thummim. Now, I'm not sure where they would find the Urim and the Thummim at this late date, but until they had an Urim and Thummim to consult the Lord about things, they couldn't prove their lineage by natural means. They'd have to have a supernatural way that God would prove that they are true priests. Until that would come along, they couldn't really serve as priests. They couldn't eat the holy things. It says in verse 64, the whole congregation together was 42,360, besides their male and female servants, of whom there were 7,337. So the total number is just right up pushing against 50,000. It's 42,360 plus 7,337, plus they had 200 men and women singers. So it's just barely under 50,000 people. Their horses were 736, their mules 245, their camels 435, and their donkeys 6,720. Some of the heads of the fathers' houses, when they came to the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem, offered freely for the house of God to erect it and its place. In its place, excuse me. According to their ability, they gave to the treasury for the work 61,000 gold drachmas, 5,000 minas of silver, and 100 priestly garments. So the priests and the Levites, some of the people and the singers, the gatekeepers and the Nethinim dwelt in their cities, and all Israel in their cities. So they returned, all these numbers that came from certain cities, they apparently went back to the cities they came from. Now the whole region that had been under Babylon subjugated was now under Persian rule, and Cyrus gave them the right to go back and just inhabit and rebuild their old cities. So there'd be an actual restoration not only of Jerusalem but of some of the original towns that these people had come from. They had their work cut out for them though, because there were nothing but ruins there, and we find that Zerubbabel, who was charged with the rebuilding of the temple and such, was facing a lot of opposition. Some of that opposition will be focused upon in chapter 4. But in chapter 3 it says, and when the 7th month had come, and the children of Israel were in the cities, the people gathered together as one man to Jerusalem. This is for the purpose of establishing worship again, setting up the altar. Then Jeshua, the son of Jehozadak, and his brethren the priests, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brethren, arose and built the altar of God of Israel to offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God. Though fear had come upon them because of the people of those countries, they set the altar on its bases, and they offered burnt offerings on it to Yahweh, both the morning and the evening burnt offerings. Now, it says fear had come upon them because of the people of those countries. We don't have specifics given in this verse, but we do later on. Both Zerubbabel and later on Nehemiah had considerable opposition from the local Samaritans. These were the people who were not Jewish, but were the descendants of those who had been brought in by the Babylonians to displace the people of Israel. And so some of the Israelites had stayed in the area, the poorest and so forth. They'd been intermarried. So these were people who were partially Jewish, but not very much Jewish. They're mostly pagan. Remember in the book of 2 Kings, it said that when these pagans were brought into the area, initially their pagan ways so displeased the Lord that he sent lions among them and killed some of them. So the Persians sent back one of the priests of Israel to teach these people the ways of Yahweh so the lions wouldn't kill them. And so it says they feared Yahweh and served other gods. That's the way these Samaritans were. They're kind of a half-breed, both racially and religiously. They served Yahweh and other gods, and therefore they weren't really pure Jews. And they gave trouble to the Jews. They didn't like seeing the Jewish religion reestablished and so forth. And we read here there was some fear, maybe some terrorism had been brought against the Jews in this case, but they nonetheless moved forward. They set up the altar, apparently on the same base that Solomon's altar had set on. They're in the same location as Solomon's temple, and it's on its proper base. And they began to offer the daily burnt offerings morning and evenings. And it says they also kept the Feast of Tabernacles, as it is written, because this was the 7th month, it says in verse 1, so it was time for that. They kept the Feast of Tabernacles, as it is written. They offered the daily burnt offerings in the number required by ordinance for each day. And afterward they offered the regular burnt offering and those for new moons and for all the appointed feasts. Now the new moons are the first day of each month, and that was treated like a holy day, just like the 7th day of every week was. And all the appointed feasts of the Lord that were consecrated, and those of everyone who willingly offered a freewill offering to Yahweh. From the first day of the 7th month they began to offer burnt offerings to the Lord, but the foundation of the temple had not yet been laid. So they had set up the altar to get that operational, but they still hadn't even begun the building project at all of the temple, not even the foundation yet. And they gave money to the masons and the carpenters, and food and drink and oil to the people of Sidon and Tyre, to bring cedar logs from Lebanon to the sea at Joppa. This is exactly what Solomon had done. He had contracted with the people in Lebanon, in his days, of course it was Hiram, the king of Tyre, to provide cedar from the forests of Lebanon, and they would float them as rafts down to Joppa, Israel's seaport, and then they'd be disassembled and treated as separate logs and planed and prepared by the Jews. And so this group of returning exiles also made a contract with the people of Sidon and Tyre to get cedars from them for the building of the temple. Verse 8, now in the 2nd month of the 2nd year of their coming to the house of God at Jerusalem, Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and the rest of their brethren, and the priests and the Levites, and all those who had come out of the captivity to Jerusalem, began to work, and appointed the Levites from 20 years old and above to oversee the work of the house of the Lord. Then Jeshua with his sons and brothers, Kadmiel with his sons and the sons of Judah, arose as one to oversee those working on the house of God, the sons of Henadad with their sons and the brethren of the Levites. When the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, the priests stood in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with the cymbals, to praise Yahweh according to the ordinance of David the king of Israel. And they sang responsively, praising and giving thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever toward Israel. Then all the people shouted with a great shout, and they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. Once the foundation was laid, they had reason to believe the rest of the building would go up successfully too. Actually, it was delayed. It was delayed for a long time. And finally, afterward, they started up again. I think it was for 16 years it was delayed. And then finally they returned to the project under the encouragement of the prophets Zechariah and Haggai, which we'll read about later on. But they were happy to see the foundation laid, but not everyone was equally happy. There were mixed reactions. It says in verse 12, but many of the priests and the Levites, the heads of the fathers' houses, who were old men, who had seen the first temple, Solomon's temple, when they saw this, it says they wept with a loud voice when the foundation of this temple was laid before their eyes. Yet many shouted aloud for joy, so that the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people. Must have been a noisy occasion, trumpets and weeping and singing and shouting, for the people shouted with a loud shout, and the sound was heard afar off. Now, why did these older men who remembered Solomon's temple weep? There's different opinions about that. Some think they wept for joy. Others feel they wept for grief, because they could see already that the budget that they had was going to be much less than Solomon's budget. They could remember how beautiful and how ornate Solomon's temple had been, and yet how inferior this one looked like it would be. It truly was an inferior building when they were finished, because they just didn't have the money Solomon had. They just couldn't, they couldn't match it. We know that Haggai wrote to them during this time, and in Haggai chapter 2, it says, in verse 3, the prophet says, "Who is left among you who saw this temple in its former glory?" Now that's the same people we're reading about who were weeping there at the end of chapter 3. They were the older men, the older priests who had seen Solomon's temple before it was destroyed. Now they're seeing this project. And it says, "Who is left among you who saw this temple in its former glory? And how do you see it now? In comparison with it, is this not in your eyes as nothing?" So in other words, it would appear that Haggai is saying is those who were weeping, who had seen the temple before and now saw the foundation laid here, that they were weeping because it seemed to them like it was like nothing. Like it was nothing compared to Solomon's temple. And yet Haggai goes on to prophesy that this latter temple will have a greater glory to it than Solomon's temple did. Perhaps a reference to the fact that Christ himself would come to this temple that Zerubbabel built and would teach there and so forth. I mean, the glory of the Lord would fill it in the person of Jesus in a different sense than Solomon's temple was filled. But we do see the beginnings of the rebuilding of the temple at this point. And in chapter 4, we're going to see the beginnings of opposition to this project, which plagued them all the way through and discouraged them initially until the prophets Zechariah and Haggai encouraged them again and they got back on the project. We'll take a break at this point, though, before we take the other part of this.